Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Pamela. Listen, before I do my other live, I just see that ASAP Rocky is on trial here, and I figured we'd spend maybe. I postponed, not postponed. I just pushed it back an hour. Um, my Ryan Reynolds deep dive, and so let's go in and watch what's going on in the courtroom over here for ASAP Rocky for about an hour. Give me one moment to add this to my screen. All right, let's get some sound.
In the opening statement. That was a question. So, yeah, do not mention that.
Understood. Your Honor, what I was planning on mentioning was that the cartridges found at scene were 9mm. In the defendant's house was a magazine that was 9mm.
All right.
And had some 9mm live ammunition in it. That was it.
If that has been part of the discovery and that was known, then that's fair game.
Yes.
But this ballistic comparison, that's off limits for the opening statement.
Yes.
Understood. All right, bring in the jury.
So it looks like they're going over the opening statements, y'all.
Oh, yeah, do you want that to Ms. Kaplan, the list of the firearms found? I could also email it. Just print it. Yes, sir. If you,
So it looks like they're getting ready to bring the jury in. They were discussing some things. Like I said, I came in on the last bit of it, so I forgive me for not knowing all the stuff that they're talking about. But it has something to do with the firearm. It has something to do with getting a ballistic examiner to examine the bullets. So, but I just was coming in. It looks like looked like I came in too late. Boo hoo, boo hoo. I was getting ready for my live stream, y'all, and I saw this and I was like, oh, I thought the ASAP Rocky trial wasn't going to be televised, but yes, it is televised, which makes me believe that I wish that California would have done the Meg the Stallion trial. I wonder if there was too much stuff going on about that. But right now we're outside the jury's presence. I just want to see if, hatcha child, let's get this off the screen. I just want to see if anybody else is talking about it really quick. Yeah, everybody is yes, everybody started their stream about 37 minutes ago. So we're getting ready to see the and so if you're unclear, ASAP Rocky faces 2 charges of felony assault with a semi-automatic firearm after he allegedly shot at his former friend. If he is convicted, y'all, he can get up to 24 years. Now, they also said that he turned down a plea deal, which would have given him 18 months. I think it was 18 months in jail with the 7-year probation, and then
believe the evidence will show. Whether the evidence in fact shows what they believe, well, we'll all know that at the end of the case. Once the opening statements are over and we begin with the testimony, if you are a note taker, that would be the.
So the jury is in.
Mr. Sloman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to start off by, on behalf of myself, Mr. Lewin, I'm sure on behalf of the defense too, and all the court staff, we all want to thank you so far for the time, attention, and candor that you gave to us during jury selection. We all understand that was a long process, and we appreciate your attention. After going through that long process, I'm sure some of you are thinking, wow, this must be a difficult case, or this must be a really complicated case. And to be fair to you, if I was sitting in your position and I looked out on the number of jurors that we started with, or even the number of attorneys that are up here, I'd probably have the same thought myself. But what the evidence will show in this case, and what will become almost instantly clear, is that this is not a complicated case. The evidence will show that the events in this case were captured on surveillance video. I'm going to start this whole presentation out by playing the video for you. So you will have that frame of reference as we're talking about different features, the people that were involved, the locations that are involved, and what happened. You will already have seen the video. The first video that I'm going to show you was captured on November 6th of 2021 at around 10:10 p.m. just outside of a parking garage entrance, mid-block, so on Argyle, in the middle of Argyle, between Hollywood Boulevard and Selma. The second video that I'm going to show you was captured 7 minutes later, so at 10:17. It was, if we're being generous, 2 blocks, maybe 1 city block away from the first location, down Argyle, around Selma, at a small intersection called Selma and Vista Del Mar. So I'm going to play the first video for you, that outside of the parking lot.
So let's see this video.
Now I'm going to move to the second location, that at Vista Del Mar and Selma, and I'm going to pre-warn you, it's a little small, it's at a distance, so you're going to want to focus your attention at the top left-hand corner. All right.
Where did that sound come from? Does this video have sound?
The people that are involved, the location, and I'll give you an explanation of what you've seen on these 2 videos. This case takes place in the heart of Hollywood. This is the iconic Hollywood and Vine. The picture you see here is just a demonstrative picture of that intersection, but it's an iconic intersection in Hollywood. That intersection is about 1 block 1 block west and 1 block north of the crime scene. So for those of you who are familiar with Hollywood and that intersection, it's a pretty big landmark, and that's where I want to focus your attention. Now, the actual shooting in this case takes place on a much smaller street, on Selma and Vista Del Mar. But this is the area around where that shooting took place. It is a very densely populated part of Hollywood, and there are some landmarks on there that you might be familiar with, just so that you can familiarize yourself with the location that we're talking about. The Capitol Records building at the top, the W Hotel, and Hollywood Boulevard. The shooting, as you've seen, occurred just outside of a parking lot on that corner of Vista, Del Mar, and Selma. That was a parking lot at the time that was full of cars, and it was ringed by a nightclub on the corner, a sound studio, a hotel, and 3 different apartment buildings right around. As I said, densely populated. This was also Saturday night. Saturday, November 6, 2021, at about 10 p.m. in Hollywood. This is a time that Hollywood is busy. Now that you understand kind of the locations that are involved, I want to...
Hi,
I want to start with how this case starts for LAPD.
Hi, I live in the apartment on the corner of Argyle and Selma in Hollywood, and there's just been a shooting.
So at 10:18 p.m., LAPD receives this call that there's been a shooting at the intersection of Argyle and Selma. The call continues though.
Did you see anything or you just heard it?
Yes. No, we watched it.
Okay, what did you see?
There were 4 men, and they were kind of fighting as they were walking along Argyle, and then they turned left onto Selma. We heard yelling, and they started running, and they turned left into the back lot apartments for El Centro Apartments.
Now the 4 men that you see on that screen will be the 4 men that we'll talk about in a minute. They were the 4 that were at that location.
And then someone pulled out, the guy in the black sweatshirt pulled out a gun.
Okay.
And he shot, and I think the guy who shot was a blue.
Now the evidence in this case will be that the man in the black sweatshirt was the defendant, Rakeem Myers. That evidence will be uncontradicted. As you have heard throughout jury selection, Mr.
Not Rihanna in the picture.
is an entertainer, and he goes by the stage name ASAP Rocky. You will hear other nicknames that he is referred to in the evidence in this case, including Flacco and Luigi. At the time of this crime, Mr. Mayers was 33 years old.
Big and
He has
grown.
his own company that I believe is referred to as AWGE, A-W-G-E, that you will hear referred to in the testimony in this case. And as we've talked about, his significant other is Rihanna. The victim in this case is a man by the name of Terrell Efron. And Mr. Efron, you will hear, was also a member of the ASAP collective, and he went by the nickname ASAP Relly. Mr. Efron was also 33 years old at the time of this crime. And what you will hear from Mr. Efron is that he was friends with Mr. Myers well before this case and well before even Mr. Myers was a famous individual. That essentially, I believe they met in high school and grew up together. He has known Mr. Myers 18 or 19 years at the time that this shooting happens. And you will also hear that he, too, at the time was working in the music industry, and he had his own company called Shut Eye Entertainment. Now, I mentioned it already, but to put a finer point on it, the group that both of these men were members of is called ASAP. It doesn't stand for what you probably thought it did when you walked into court. It's an acronym for Always Strive and Prosper. It was formed by high school age kids in Harlem, New York around 2006. They call themselves a collective. You will hear our rap.
You know what's interesting to me is the way that they're describing all of this. This looks like, you know, how when you're in high school, you form your little clique, you form your little group. But it seems like they're trying to I don't know why Rico and Rico cases always get up in my head, but they're trying to, I'm gonna let them continue, but that's what I'm trying to, it figures like they're trying to make more of this than what it is. But basically they were friends. All of them were friends and they were all business partners and things like that. But let's continue.
Rappers, producers, music video directors, designers, people that have different artistic pursuits that essentially work together. And there are many members of ASAP. The ones that you will primarily hear in this case are obviously Mr. Mayers, the victim, but also the 2 friends that were with Mr. Mayers at the time this happened. And they go by ASAP Ills and ASAP 12B. And I will just pre-warn you that 12B gets spelled a bunch of different ways. It's not always consistent. And there will be one last member that you'll hear about briefly who goes by the stage name ASAP Bari. Sometimes people refer to him as Young Lord. As I said, the 4 main members of this group that you will hear about are these four men. The victim is on the far right, Mr. Efron. The defendant is the next person to his left. As I said, ASAP 12E, his given name is Jamel Phillips, and the last is Elijah Ulanger, who goes by ASAP Phillips. And these were the four men who were present at the time of both of these incidents. Now, I want to take you to that weekend, Saturday night, in Hollywood. There was actually, at the time, a music festival or concert series going on known as Complex Con in Long Beach. And you will hear that Mr. Mayers was to be a performer at that event the day after the shooting, the Sunday, November 7th. Now, although I told you that Mr. Mayers and Mr. Efron were close at one point, you will hear that throughout their relationship, there was tension between the two of them. And that tension was essentially building up to the night of November 6th, 2021. You will not hear all the reasons why there was tension between the two of them, but we will get to the point the day before this shooting, November 5th, 2021, when that tension kind of comes to a head. But what happens on that day, Mr. Efron will tell you, is that he is in a car with that last member of the ASAP group that I talked about, ASAP Bari. The two of them are driving when ASAP Bari receives a phone call from Mr. Mayers. And ASAP Bari takes that call on speakerphone. So Mr. Efron, who's in the car, can hear both sides of the conversation. He can hear Mr. Mayers and he can also hear ASAP Bari. And in the course of that call, Mr. Efron, the victim, heard the defendant saying these rude and aggressive things about him. Mr. Mayers at the time does not know that Mr. Efron is in the car with the victim.
Messy.
This leads to the next day, November 6th, 2021. You'll hear that Mr. Efron was in Los Angeles working with one of the artists that he managed. He was asleep around 9:00 p.m. when he started receiving a series of urgent messages from not only from Mr. Mayers, but from the two other men that were with him, ASAP Ills and ASAP 12. And you'll hear that he received a number of calls kind of back to back to back from the three of them. Now, he didn't answer those calls because he was sleeping, but when he ultimately woke up, he saw that he had a number of missed calls. He also received text messages from Mr. Mayers that were aggressive, seeking a confrontation with him, asking him where he was. Mr. Mayers is on the left side of this conversation. Where are you at? Let's get to it. Stop ducking my calls. The messages that the victim is receiving are instantly aggressive towards him. So you will hear from Mr. Efron that he called the defendant. He was groggy because he had just woken up. They had a conversation and they agreed to meet outside of the W Hotel in Hollywood. Mr. Efron
Luigi is ASAP Rocky,
meeting,
one of his nicknames.
he was of the frame of mind that he and Mr. Mayers were going to have a confrontation. That he believed they would argue, and that ultimately this would lead to kind of repairing their relationship. So they would each be able to speak their piece and essentially fight like brothers do. And then it would ultimately bring them closer together. They would repair sort of the issues that they each had with each other. So that's how Mr. Efron is going into this meeting. Now, let's talk about the location where they meet, this location just outside of the W Hotel. You're gonna see this map throughout this case. So I wanna take some time to walk through it with you so you understand the various features that are depicted here. On the left side of the screen is Argyle Avenue. On the bottom of the screen is Selma Avenue, and on the right side of the screen is El Centro Avenue. Now you can't see it in this map, but if the map were to continue off the top of the screen, Hollywood Boulevard would be just above that. In the middle of this map, there's a small street called Vista Del Mar that it kind of goes north and then forces you to go east. The red arrows that you see here are the path of travel that Mr. Mayers took that evening. So it starts at that mid-block location on Argyle, continues down to Selma, and then up Vista Del Mar, around that corner, all the way to El Centro, and then he made a left turn on El Centro and went above, off the map. The numbers in the red boxes that you see here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are the 4 different locations where the police were ultimately able to recover surveillance video from. There are 4 different locations. Attached to each one of those locations, you'll see the green triangle and with a green arrow in the middle. And what that represents is very roughly, this is not meant to be, exact, but very roughly the direction that a camera attached to that building was facing. You will also hear that locations 1, 2, and 4 captured video only. But you will hear that the location with the number 3 captured both video and audio. So I told you there's 2 incident locations, 2 altercations that happened. The first happens where the yellow box is right now, right outside of that parking garage. The second happens at that corner of Selma and Vista Del Mar. And that's where the firearm was actually discharged, where the gunshots were fired. So the first location I want to focus on is that where the initial confrontation happens. This location is the entrance and exit of a parking structure. This is that parking structure entrance if you were standing in Argyle and you were facing towards Selma. So Hollywood Boulevard would be to your back. And the entrance is on the left-hand side there. And what you will see in the videos, this parking lot entrance has those hanging indicators from the roof that tell you how tall the garage is, so that if you are driving a tall car, you don't, of course there's a fly buzzing around me, you don't run your car into the roof of the parking structure. And I point that out because when you watch the video, you'll actually see that red indicator as a kind of a line through the video, so you know what that is. At the mouth of that parking entrance, there are cameras that are facing the sidewalk. Those are the first view that we saw. And these cameras capture the initial encounter between the victim, Mr. Efron, who you see there, and the defendant, Mr. Mayers. And you can see that Ills is the first one to intervene to try to separate the 2 of them. And then at the very bottom of the screen, you see 12E putting his hand to try to also intervene and help separate them. Now I know it goes by quickly, and you're not as familiar with all these people, so I want to kind of break it down a little bit for you and show you what the evidence that you're going to receive throughout this case. The first person that you see in that video is the victim, Mr. Efron. The second person who you see, who is instantly confrontational with Mr. Efron, is the defendant, Mr. Mayers. You see on the video that Mr. Mayers is immediately aggressive towards Mr. Efron. He's pulling at Mr. Efron's sweatshirt, and he's pushing Mr. Efron backward and pushes him off camera, out of camera view. The third person that you see, as I told you, is Elijah Elanger, who also goes by ASAP Ills, or he might just be referred to as Ills throughout this. If you look closely, you can actually see his stage name embroidered on the jacket that he's wearing there. And what he attempts to do is to de-escalate the situation, to get between the two men and to physically separate them. And you'll see that all three of them go off screen for a period of time. Mr. Efron will tell you that during the period of time that they are off screen is when the defendant first produces that semi-automatic pistol from his waistband. He pulls it out of his waistband and he's holding it to Mr. Efron. Mr. Efron will tell you that the defendant pointed the gun at his chest and was essentially trying to point the gun around Ills, who was between them. That at the time that he was pointing the gun at Mr. Efron, he was also threatening Mr. Efron. I'm going to kill you. Keep in mind, these men have known each other for a long time. And Mr. Efron will tell you, in his state of mind, he never believed that he was going to be shot. He never believed that the defendant would actually shoot him. He will tell you that had this been a stranger, someone he didn't know as well, he would have been petrified. As you can imagine, anyone pointing a gun at you would upset you. But he knows the defendant. He knows that Mr. Mayers is not going to shoot him. He knows so much so that he'll tell you he looked at the defendant and said, if you brought a gun, you should shoot it. That's how confident he is that he knows the defendant is not going to pull that trigger. Now, the fourth person you can barely see on this video as they come back into frame, I told you, is Jamel Phillips, who goes by 12B or ASAP 12. And you can just see his hand at the very bottom of the screen. When they come back on screen, and specifically when Mr. Mayers comes back on screen, you can see the gun in his hand. You will hear that that gun that he's holding is a semi-automatic pistol, or has features that are consistent with a semi-automatic pistol. Right now, as he's
They're showing him with the gun. He's got the gun. They've identified him as the person in the hoodie, and they're showing that he has a gun. Now, again, from what we understand, according to ASAP Rocky's lawyer's defense, this is supposed to be a prop gun that didn't shoot. However, we did hear the prosecution say that they had someone to call in, that there were shots fired, and that they saw the kerfluffle. They saw what was going on, and they described what was going on. So we'll see what the defense has to say. But this is looking a little damning for him. Now, I told you all, if you watch my last video, all of this kind of came up. Excuse me. All of this came up because ASAP Relly was suing for hospital bills. He didn't go to the police about this. He was suing about a hospital bill, and they were in court for that. And then this escalated from there because I think the police at the time didn't know who was shooting or doing what. So let's continue.
Pause on the screen. You can see that he's holding that gun behind his back, but you also see the gun come forward in front of his body before he ultimately tucks it back into his waistband. And you will see from the video that there were bystanders. As I said, this is a busy Saturday night in Hollywood, walking by as this confrontation is taking place.
Uh-oh. Witnesses.
That right after that encounter that you saw, that Mr. Mayers walked away and was walking down Argyle towards Selma. Mr. Efron will tell you that as he walked away, he looked over at 12E, Mr. Phillips, and he saw 12E putting a pocket knife away. And Mr. Efron, and then 12E, Mr. Phillips, walked behind the defendant, Mr. Mayers, and Ills walked behind him as well. So the three men that had come to confront Mr. Efron walked away down Argyle towards Selma. And Mr. Efron will tell you that at that moment, his mindset about the initial confrontation changed. I told you that Mr. Efron will tell you when he first went there, he believed that this was meant to be a confrontation so that they could strengthen their relationship. But having just had a gun pointed at him and seeing another friend putting away a pocket knife, that his mindset changed and he understood these men never came here to try to make peace with him, that it was always meant to be a confrontation. And he decided at that moment that having a gun pointed at him was sort of a bridge too far in their friendship. And he understood he was probably never going to have the same friendship, especially with the defendant, ever again. And you will hear that as the defendant walked away, Mr. Efron followed behind him and was yelling and screaming at him, even though he knew the defendant had a gun. Because although Mr. Efron believed this is going to damage our relationship, he still never believed that the defendant would actually shoot at him. It's not as if Mr. Efron will tell you that he had some death wish or that he was not scared of guns. He will not come in and say that. What he will tell you again is that had anyone else done this, he would have been frightened. But he had known the defendant for so long and they were close. So he walks down Argyle towards Selma and follows behind the three other men. When they get to Selma, they all turn left and they walk towards Vista Del Mar. And they end up at that location we've talked about, that corner of Selma and Vista Del Mar. And as Mr. Mayers stepped off the curb, he walked into frame of the camera at location number 2 that's pointing towards Selma. Now I want to take you, before I play the video again, I want to take you to that corner so that you can see from that night what it looked like. It's a small street with a parking lot immediately adjacent to it that were full of parked cars. And at 10:17 p.m., when they arrived at that intersection and the defendant stepped off the street corner into view of camera number 2, you will see video from that location. The video that I've played for you already and that I'm going to play for you again is from that location number 2. You will also see, that's the main video that you're watching, but you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a smaller video on top of it. It kind of has a bluish tint to it. And that video is from another location behind building number 2 where the number 3 is. And the video that you're seeing from that location is identified there by the green arrow. But what's important about that video, because the video does not capture the shooting at location number 3. What location number 3 captures is audio. And it captures the sound of the gun being fired twice. This is the location number 2 where the camera, the video that actually captured that shooting was. You can see the cameras at the very top corner of the building, and it's about 3 properties away from the location that we're seeing. So again, the video is captured at a distance. It's a admittedly grainy video. It's not the most clear that you could possibly have. but it captures enough features that you can identify who is who when you watch this video. So I told you the main video that you're watching is from location number 2, and that smaller location number 3 is in the corner. Before I play the video, I want to orient you to what you're seeing. Along the top is Vista Del Mar. The parking lot is just out of view of the camera at the top of the screen. Along the top left-hand corner is Selma, forms that intersection. The red arrow is the defendant, Mr. Mayer. And the green arrow is the victim, Mr. Efron.
These look like grainy VHS, VCR type videos. People fighting. Is that ASAP Rocky running?
What you see as the video plays is the
Who's running?
various cameras on location number 2 switching between 3 different cameras that are mounted to that building. What's important about that, towards the end of the video, you'll see as Mr. Mayers is running away from the location, running down Vista Del Mar towards El Centro, he trips a floodlight that's motion activated. And when you watch the video closely, that floodlight is captured by both locations. So location number 2 and location number 3, those cameras each capture that floodlight turning on. And when you watch the videos together, you can see that moment in time when the lights flash on, line up. And that's how you know the sound correlates with the video that you're seeing playing at the same time from a different location. Now, I told you, we all know the video from location number 2 is from a distance. If you zoom in on the area where this incident happened, and we will play a zoomed in version of this video, what you see is a very pixelated image. But what even that captures still are the colors the individuals are wearing, which is how you can distinguish who is who on the video. And you'll see Mr. Efron on the far left. Ills is just next to him. 12E, who's wearing the red jacket, is just next to Ills. And then the defendant, who's wearing all black, is at the bottom of the screen. Again, I understand if you watch this video one time, you may not pick up these features, but as you watch it repeatedly, you'll be able to tell who is who. And you'll also be able to tell when you watch these videos in sequence, because they walk in front of other cameras that are far more clear, that you can easily identify who is who on this video.
Yes, because we need clearer cameras, because these VCR cameras are not hidden at all.
This is not having audio.
There's a car that just went by.
Now, as we play the zoomed in version, you'll also see that Mr. Efron is struggling with Ills. And what Mr. Efron will tell you is that immediately as the defendant turned and pointed the gun at him, he jumped behind Ills, essentially to put Ills between him and the defendant. And you'll see on the video the defendant lunging one way and then the other way around Ills, trying to get at the victim, who is holding Ills in front of him. Now, despite how dangerous this is, having a semi-automatic pistol pointed at you and discharged twice, you will hear that Mr. Efron was not seriously injured by this shooting. He has these injuries to the middle knuckle of one of his hands. Mr. Efron will tell you that at the time the shooting was happening, he immediately felt a burning sensation to his hand, which led him to believe that these were graze wounds from one of the bullets that was shot at him. Perhaps they were. Perhaps they were not. Whether or not the victim in this case was actually shot or injured by this will not be something that you have to decide at the end of the case. We ask you to wait until the end of the case when the judge instructs you on the law, what elements are actually required to be proven before you make any decision. And to listen to the charges specifically and not consider charges that the defendant is not charged with. In this case, he's not charged with attempted murder, for instance. Now, before I move on, I want to focus in on the last location that I haven't talked about much, location number 4. That location is a loading dock for this building on El Centro. It's right at the corner of El Centro and Vista Del Mar. And what you'll see in the video from that location is the defendant, Mr. Mayers, and his companion, 12B, walking from Vista Del Mar up El Centro towards Hollywood Boulevard. The arrows indicate their path of travel. They're going to come from that corner and then walk up El Centro. The camera itself is in that red circle. And you'll see this video is far more clear. And you'll see features of their clothing that you can match up to the clothing from the other videos that we've already watched. For instance, I mean, you can see just from Mr. Mayer's facial features that he's the one wearing all black. You can see from his facial features compared to the video from the parking structure. And then, as I said, the various features of his clothing, the rhinestones on the hood of his sweatshirt in both videos, and the design of the rhinestone design on the chest of his sweatshirt at both videos. And taking all the videos in their totality and comparing them is how you'll be able to decide on the video who is who. Now, I played the 911 call for you that LAPD received at 10:18, which triggered.
So if you're just joining, we are watching the opening statements by the prosecution of the California versus Joaquin Myers, aka ASAP Rocky. He is doing his opening statement, which he is outlining the facts of this case. He's doing a decent job, as I see. He's being very methodical. He's not trying to over explain too much. He is giving us the facts as we see them. Has visual evidence to do that, even though some of the visual evidence looks a little grainy. But we're just going to continue. He is outlining everything they're going to. He has been charged, ASAP Rocky, with assault, two charges of assault with a semi-automatic firearm. So we'll continue.
Their response, and you'll see and hear that at 10:27, LAPD officers responded to the 911 call, and as is their duty, they responded quickly to this call to try to of shots fired in the middle of Hollywood. You will hear from at least one of the officers who responded to that location, and the officer will tell you that as part of their uniform, they wear cameras that are mounted to their chest, and you will actually get to watch camera that captures the police response. After this shooting, the evidence will be that all 4 of these men,
Y'all continue because I've got to go get my water real quick. I'll be right back.
Left the scene. You'll hear that there were at least 2 people who called 911 to report this crime, who were just people living in the surrounding area, not actually involved in the altercation itself. You'll hear that the 911 callers were reporting different information. So the first call would be that the gunshots were fired at Argyle and Selma. The second call will be that the gunshots were fired in the area closer to Vista Del Mar and El Centro. You will hear from the officer that as they responded, they come to the scene looking for a victim. That's their primary focus. Trying to find anyone who needs immediate life-saving attention. Their second focus will be looking for the potential suspects if they can find them. And you'll hear from the officer that as he's receiving information that's taking him to different locations, he's actually going between the different locations and trying to piece together what happened. But what will be important from his testimony is that he is not given a precise location to exactly where this shooting happened. And with the limited information that he has, he and his partners are doing the best job that they can to find any victims, any suspects, or any evidence of a shooting. You'll hear the officer talk to different people who were just out and about, try to figure out what was going on, that neither of the 911 callers would meet with them, and that they searched not only the surrounding streets, but they primarily focused on the parking lot that was right at that corner of Vista Del Mar and Selma, because the second 911 caller had told him, or had relayed that it was possible that the shooting was happening into a car. The officer will tell you that they searched the area and they did not find any evidence of a shooting. They didn't find a victim with injuries. They didn't find any of the suspects, and they didn't find any discharged cartridge cases, which are what come out of a gun after you discharge it in the surrounding area. But again, they don't know exactly where to look with the limited information that they're given. You will also hear from Mr. Efron that approximately an hour, and he's not precise on the exact time, but approximately an hour after the shooting, he himself returned to the location. Now, at this time, the police have already responded and left. Mr. Efron will tell you that he and his girlfriend went there specifically to look for evidence that this had happened, evidence of this shooting. And Mr. Efron will tell you, because he knew exactly where the shooting happened, that he was able to locate 2 fired cartridge cases. This is actually a photograph that Mr. Efron himself took of one of the fired cartridge cases that he found. Mr. Efron, you'll hear, went to the police 2 days later, walked into the Hollywood police station to report this crime happening. He brought the 2 fired cartridge cases with him, and he gave them to the police. You will hear that the 2 cartridge cases that he brought in were 9mm Luger caliber cartridge cases. However, you'll also hear from Mr. Efron that immediately after the shooting, about an hour and a half later, he started text messaging the defendant. And he text messaged the defendant, "You try killing me." That was the first message he sent to him. And you'll hear that Mr. Mayer's response was to deny that anything happened. The defendant, in abbreviation, says, "What the fuck is you talking about? Why are you telling people I shot at you?" Denying that any shooting has even happened. Mr. Efron confronts him again. "You set me up to try to take me from my daughter." And the defendant responds, "I tried to do what? I know you hate me, I hate you too." The defendant responds again, "Stop making shit up." Again, denying any confrontation took place. Certainly any shooting. We've already told you in jury selection, and you will hear evidence, that after this shooting, Mr. Efron sought money from Mr. Mayers. In fact, right, hours after the shooting, so this is the next day, November 7th, in the early morning hours, 3:40 a.m., you'll hear that Mr. Efron sent a message to one of his friends saying that he wants money. And identifying the reason why he wants that money is because Mr. Mayers shot at him. You will also hear that based upon these two incidents, the parking lot and the shooting on the corner, that Mr. Efron filed a civil lawsuit against Mr. Mayers. At the end of this case, you will not be asked to award Mr. Efron any money. So that consideration will not be a part of your what you're asked to determine. Moving forward in time, you'll hear from LAPD detectives that Mr. Mayer's home was searched on April 20th of 2022, and that during that search, LAPD detective recovered a magazine for a semi-automatic pistol that was 9mm caliber, and that it was loaded with 6 unfired 9mm Luger rounds of live ammunition. You will hear that these items were found in Mr. Mayer's bedroom closet. You will also hear that there was no handgun that was 9mm in Mr. Mayer's home that was for that magazine. So you have a 9mm magazine, but no handgun to go with it. The last point I want to leave you with before I conclude is that we expect, in this case, that the defense will call 12B, Mr. Phillips, to testify. At the time of the shooting, again, he's friends with all these participants. He's 32 years old. And it is expected that he will testify that the defendant was, in fact, the person on the video who fired the 2 gunshots that we hear. So it will essentially be uncontested that Mr. Mayers was the person who fired the gun at that street corner, and that he will tell you the gun that the defendant fired was a starter pistol. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what the evidence in this case will show at the end of this case. As I've said, we expect that the defense will attempt to present an alternative explanation for what happened that night. But we ask you to do one thing, which is, as you evaluate the evidence from both sides in this case, to not leave your common sense at the door, and wait until the end of the case, when you have all the evidence, to make your decision, listen to the court's instructions on the law, and return the only just verdict there is. Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll take the break now. Please be outside the courtroom doors at 1:30, as close to that time as possible. We'll have you come in, and you will hear from Mr. Packard. Are you going to do the? All right, please don't discuss the case amongst yourselves or anybody else. Please do not go on the internet and read anything about this case, and please don't look at any newspapers. Got to keep that open.
All right. It looks like we're taking a break before they get to the defense's opening statement. Again, I do apologize for coming in the middle of it because initially I was told that they were not going to televise it, but now that they are televising, I am going to follow this case next week. I've got another video that I was to do around this time, going on to 2:30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this broadcast. I will pick it up after I finish my video, my next video. We will start at the defense's opening arguments, and we'll go from there and then go to the end of the day. Also, join me back later on this evening because I will be reading and reviewing the Chris Brown lawsuit. He's suing Warner Brothers Discovery, and they own HBO Max, in regards to the documentary that they had put out. He is suing them for defamation and libel. We will go over the initial letter, the press release that he sent out, and we'll also go over the court filing, the complaint. It's about 31 pages, so that shouldn't take us but an hour and a half to go back over. So I do want you all to be able to join me then. Again, I apologize. This was a very impromptu stream, but I'll be better organized on Monday now that I know that it looks like they're going to be live streaming it. So join me on Monday. They are in Pacific time. I'm in Central time, so that's like 2 hours behind. So 10:30 will probably be 8:30 for them. So we definitely will we'll pick that. We'll do this and pick this up. So it's about maybe 12:30. So they'll probably be out for about an hour for lunch, and we'll let them do that. And then this afternoon again, the defense will pick up with their opening statements. So from what you all have heard and what I have gathered, and I've done a video on this before. Go check out my playlist, my celebrity legal news. But basically, this case came about because ASAP Rocky was suing ASAP Rocky for his medical bills and all those other things because he had, because he had alleged that ASAP Rocky had shot him. In the course of that particular trial, it was noted that I think one of the lawyers had argued, well, there's no evidence or anything that he had been shot or anything. It was some mess like that. However, the police started putting A squared plus B squared equals C squared, and realized that they had received a report of a shooting. They didn't find any shell casings. They didn't find anything of value as far as showing that somebody had been shot. And then we find out that ASAP Rocky went to the police station and he went back to the crime scene, and then he picked up the shell casings and took them to the police. So they were arguing early, and we came right in the middle of it. So I can't begin to say, I'm just speculating, but we can definitely go back and do the opening statements and the defense statements together. But they were basically saying that there was some ballistics that have to be shown, but we'll get into that further into the case. I did a poll on my channel about what did you think that his criminal defense was going to be. And let's see how you all did on that poll. Let's see. All right. Or if you all did the poll or not. All right, so we had 5 votes. I said, what is ASAP Rocky's defense? 20% of you all. I'm sorry. 20% of you all said I wasn't at the scene, and the other 80% said that I have a prop gun, and that's what his defense is that the gun wasn't a real gun; it was a prop gun. So therefore, I guess he's saying that the prop gun didn't shoot. I don't know what's going on with that. But this is the thing. So again, they said that the opening statement started today. And again, I apologize because I did not know that it was going to be televised. I knew what time it was. And that's because of Megan Cuniff. She's following this case. And also I'm not a lawyer, but Mel is also following that case. Go follow Mel if you are familiar with her channel. Go follow her as well, because she was in the courtroom. She's been in the courtroom, so I am very excited for her as well. All right, people, we do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video if you care. I'm like I said, I have a commitment to do my Ryan Reynolds deep dive, so I pushed it back for 2:30. So I'm going to get off here, get prepared to do that. I'm going to have the ASAP Rocky court hearing on the side so that I can see when they are going to start again. And once they start again, because I don't think that I don't know how long my that video is going to be, but once they start again, we'll definitely get back up, push back up, and we'll finish out the day with them. All right, people, please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell a coworker, tell that heifer that you can't stand that I'm over here making these videos. And as always, people, bye bye.